Pawns are often the first units that jump into the battle for both sides, fighting for space. As this happens, pawns are often threatened by other pawns and pieces. When a pawn is in danger, we often have several choices. Should we push the pawn, capture the attacker, or just ignore the threat? The answer depends on what is going on in each position. Let's take a look at some examples. Let's take a look at the position after the opening moves e4 and knight f6. Black immediately puts pressure on white's pawn on e4. What should we do about this threat? Should we push the pawn, protect the pawn, or ignore the threat? Well, since this is only the second move of the game, there isn't a stronger threat that can be made, so white should not let black simply take the pawn on e4 with the knight. We can protect the pawn and develop a piece with knight to c3, so this is a reasonable move. It's also important to know that if we can defend and also attack, this is usually the best option. White can push the pawn forward to e5, defending against the knight's threat and attacking the knight at the same time. Let's take a look at another position. In this endgame position, black plays rook to e8, attacking the pawn on e4. White could push the pawn to d3, protecting the pawn, or push the pawn to e5, where it is guarded by the pawn on f4. These moves are fine, but why does white need to react? What if white ignores the threat and plays rook to b1? White activates the rook and is ready to take advantage of black's back rank if black is careless. White realizes the e4 pawn cannot be captured because after rook takes e4, black's rook leaves the back rank wide open, and we have a classic back rank checkmate beginning with rook to b8 check. And after rook e8, rook takes e8 is checkmate. In this case, ignoring a threat because you have a greater threat against your opponent is an excellent strategy. Only react to your opponent's threat if you don't have a stronger threat available. Let's look at another position. In this position, black plays d5, attacking the unprotected pawn on c4. Should white's c4 pawn ignore, push, or capture? Let's look at each option. If white's pawn on c4 stays on that square, ignoring black's threat, black will simply win the pawn on c4 for free unless white brings the rook away from the center and plays rook to c1. Not a terrible choice, but there is a stronger move. If white pushes the pawn to c5, notice that black's bishop on f8 would simply capture the pawn. This leaves us with the option of capturing the d5 pawn. After c takes d5, c takes d5. Both sides have captured pawns, which doesn't make a big change in the position, so it's an okay option. But was that the only way white could capture the pawn? Let's take a look. After d5, did you notice that black's d-pawn passed white's e-pawn on the 5th rank? This allows white a second capturing option. Don't forget en passant, after e takes d6 check, white uses the en passant rule to capture the d-pawn, opening up the e-file for white's rook, creating a discovered check against black's king. After king d7, white can hold on to the extra pawn by setting up a pawn chain with c5. Let's practice finding the best decision: push, capture, or ignore the threat in the following examples.